What's up, guys? Standard Lifestyle. We're going to finish a project that we just started last week, and that is building a tire carrier for this Land Rover Discovery 2. Today's video is brought to you by Ameribrade. It goes without saying that projects like this require a lot of consumable parts and pieces, like cutoff wheels, grinding discs, and flap discs. And if you're anything like me, you've got a budget you have to stick to. I try to cut costs anywhere I can while still trying to get the job done in a professional way. Ameribrade offers a way for you to get high quality products at a very budget-friendly price, making it to where you can save money but not sacrifice quality. If you're shopping around for consumable products for your next project, I highly recommend you check out Ameribrade. Click the Ameribrade link in our description to head directly to their website and see how much you can save. In the last episode, we built a solid foundation for this tire carrier and knocked out a lot of the low-hanging fruit. There's a whole bunch of work we need to get done this week, but I'm excited to show you guys the kinds of ideas I've been coming up with and what we have in store for this build. I got a lot of questions as to why I am mounting the swing portion, the spindle, on the driver's side of the vehicle instead of the passenger side, whereas most vehicles traditionally, the tire carrier will follow the swing of the door. So the door is going to open up to the passenger. This is going to open up and swing out to the driver. And the reason that I want to do that is something I'm just going to have to show you, I guess. But there is an overlanding function that I think, for whatever reason, is overlooked. A lot of people haven't really looked at tire carriers as being a means to help you be more comfortable and help you carry less gear off-road. And what I want to do before we get too far in this project is I want to explain what my plan is here, and then as you see it come together, it'll start clicking. So I am going to cut the piece that I need for this arm. I'm going to mount this onto the spindle, and then we're going to open up and I'm going to talk about what my plan is and see if it's even possible. I'm going to start by shotgunning some measurements together, tacking it all in place, and then once I mount all of this stuff on the vehicle and we talk about my different plans, I can see what kinds of things are going to be realistic and what kinds of things aren't. 3" by 2" by 3/16 rectangular tubing seems like an appropriate size for this project. It shouldn't give us a whole lot of deflection, and it should give us plenty of surface area to weld onto the hinge. Now that I have this lower swing arm installed and I have it opened up 180 degrees, I think that this is going to be so much easier for me to explain what my idea is here. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is an Overland vehicle specifically, so I want to make it to where it's very comfortable and very easy to use for camping. I did a video called Ultimate Overlander Tailgate Kitchen, I believe, and that's where I built this setup right here. And this way I have a burner that drops into here, and this is a cook surface, and then this is a prep surface. I've got all of my odds and ends for cooking and cleaning and whatnot in there. And then this is where my fridge goes. So what I want, and what I think everyone wants, is more countertop space, right? That's what I want to do here. Since we open this up 180 degrees and this isn't wedged behind that door, it makes it to where we have this very nice and convenient location for extra cook surface. And I haven't seen anyone do this before, which I find interesting. I thought about this almost right after I got the Land Rover. I was like, man, it'd be sweet to have like this big L shape where I had all this surface and I don't have to set up a bunch of tables everywhere. I can just drop them down out of the tailgate. And initially I wanted to make this the same way, where it's basically hinged and it drops down. But the more I'm thinking about it, I think I might actually build a surface that just like clips in and bolts and unbolts without tools. So I've got some ideas for that. But I want to make it out of the same material, so we're going to make it out of aluminum, so it'll be lightweight, it'll be rigid, and corrosion resistant and whatnot. I don't have to paint it, and that should make a really good surface for this. A couple other reasons that I want to have, everyone wants more tabletop space, whether it's in your shop or it's overlanding. But the way I'm envisioning this is I can take this box right here, which is my kitchen sink and my hot water tank. I can set it up right here, and then whenever I'm cooking and cleaning and all that stuff, I can go from, using the stirring spoon for the last time, I can throw it right into the kitchen sink right here, and I'll have it all set up in one shot. I think that this would be a really nice way to accessorize our tire carrier and exploit every resource we can for hooking up these extra accessories that make it more comfortable to camp. Before I move any farther forward with mounting stuff on this swing arm, I want to build a plate that mounts to the door. The door on this vehicle was made to mount a factory spare tire, so I know that it's made to shore up extra weight. This gives me a big opportunity to move some of the weight off of the tire carrier itself and place that weight onto the chassis. Sometimes when you're building things yourself and you have to adapt a certain shape to work with a factory location, you're going to find yourself building some pretty odd looking junk. Fortunately for us, in the case of this tire carrier mount, it's going to be covered with the tire, so even though this is going to look a little funny, I'm going to greatly prioritize function over form, and at the end of the day, I'm trying to make something that's very practical and useful. I think the factory ladder doesn't look that bad. I've got some ideas in my head that I want to try and manifest and see how it looks in the real world. I'm going to put together some square shapes because in my head a square ladder will match the character of this vehicle a little bit better, and we'll just see how it looks once we lay it up there on the vehicle. I'm at a point where I have to start making decisions, and there's a bunch of changes that have happened in the last 5 minutes or so of me putting this together. So first off, I want to mount some different accessories back here. One of them is Max Tracks. Not everybody likes to bolt a bunch of plastic all over the rig, but I think Max Tracks are very practical, especially for a rig like this. So I'm definitely going to be using those, and I'm going to incorporate those into the rear carrier in some way. So originally, I was going to build my own ladder. It was going to be on this side. I was going to remove this ladder because I like the look of square tube for a ladder like this. I think that the design I have in my head was going to look pretty cool. But now that I'm actually getting it up there, I'm starting to realize that I don't need a ladder anyway, and I don't think I'm going to build a new one. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this guy. I am going to mount this section that was going to be the ladder to our carrier. I'm going to mount the Max Track to this section that was going to be the ladder. The top of the ladder, I'm going to build a mount for an antenna for my Midland radio that I'm going to be installing, and then I don't have to mess with this side at all. I think I'm just going to keep the factory ladder. I'm going to mount the tire in the center because I think that looks very American. Having the tire in the center looks very American rock crawler to me. So I want to split the weight of the accessories between the door and the carrier because the door is made to support its own spare tire, so I know it's strong enough. So I think if I ever mount any jerry cans or anything, it will get incorporated into this mount that I'm building here. And I'm just going to use the weight of the tire on the carrier to make it as strong as possible. Then the latch for the carrier will be hooking to this beam, basically, that I've built that was going to be a ladder but is no longer going to be. And then then my tire carrier will mount to the door right there. I think that's our plan. I mean, there's a lot of different configurations you can do this in, and no matter what I do, I know I'm going to get comments saying that I should have done it this way or that way, but I think that this is what makes the most sense for the look that I want and for the accessories that I want. I want to also build it expandable, so in the future I will be adding accessories to this, but for today we just need a tire. I'm going to keep that factory ladder, and we are going to mount some Max Tracks. If you watched the first video in this mini-series, you already can tell that I have greatly changed the way that I saw this bumper and tire carrier turning out initially. But that's just how these kinds of builds go for me. I don't have a blueprint necessarily that I stick to. I'll jot down some different ideas so I can see how it looks on a piece of paper. But once I actually start to fabricate, things change dramatically because I just like to keep my creative mind open and move forward on what makes sense right now, not necessarily what made sense on a table inside my house. big fan of the combination of flat and round shapes together, and that is definitely exemplified in this Disco as a whole. I think things look boring when it's a bunch of flat plate or flat tube, or if it's just a bunch of round tube, and I think that the averaging between the two can really help add a little bit of style and dimension to stuff you build. Because of the other flat and round accessories that I've already built for this Discovery, like the roof rack and the sliders, it gives me a lot of flexibility in building something that is going to still blend in well with the overall look and feel of this rig. Sweet. Everything clears. So that is very good news. I really like this handle. I like the way this is all going together. There's one concern. I'm probably overthinking this, right? But one portion of this latch system anchors to the body. The other portion of this latch system anchors to the frame. And that concerns me because the body is being suspended by a series of rubber bushings. My concern is that if I get too flexed out, that it will try and pop this open when I don't want it to pop open, and then I have a 37-inch tall tire, big heavy thing, just swinging this all over the place. That's a problem. Could just break the spindle right off, I don't know. So I think I'm going to try and think of a secondary safety measure. I mean, it could be as simple as just like a cable that maybe goes around both pieces. So if this does pop open, the cable will keep it together. I'll hear the clinking and I can come back here and fix whatever problem I'm having. I don't think that realistically this is going to be an issue because the chassis on these are known for being very rigid, but it's something that is definitely worth trying to figure out a way to engineer through, at least temporarily. At least the first few trips, I should tie something around there to make sure that if this pops open, I don't have a very unfortunate circumstance. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to take this polyurethane bushing that is made to be a rest for this swing arm, and I'm going to mount it onto this guy somehow. So I want to build, let me duck under there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a plate that's going to go behind it. I am going to drill and tap it so I can throw some bolts in there, and then I'm going to have to build a plate to support the bottom of it. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it to where when there's a little bit of sag on this swing arm, which is something we are definitely going to deal with, once there's a 37-inch tall tire on it, it's going to make it sag a little. Because this has this like 45-degree taper right here, I should be able to just push it onto it. This will lift it up, and then it'll be a nice rubberized, polyurethanized, I guess, support that'll make it to where I don't have metal-on-metal contact. It's going to make this a silent operation. That's what we're going for here. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to engineer that, and then I guess I'll start throwing some gussets and finish welding this backing plate. This is about the time in a project where you start to feel it really pick up steam. I've got all the ideas out. I've got things tacked together. I've got things bolted together. Now we can start laying in some permanent welds. We can start bolting things up for a final fitment, and we're really accelerating a much greater pace than we do at the beginning of a build like this. I'm testing out a brand new belt sander that I just got from a company called Ameribrade, and this thing is top notch. It came on a stand so I can roll it around on a set of casters, and when a tool like this is combined with the right abrasives like the stuff we have from Empire, it can really help move fabrication along swiftly. backing plate is certainly not the prettiest thing I've ever built, but I think it's very functional because I ran this gusset all the way across here. It makes it to where we have a really strong plane here. The entire piece itself is more rigid, meaning that if I'm gonna pull on it here, it's gonna help transfer some of that energy away from these 3 bolts, and hopefully this plate is large enough and strong enough and rigid enough that if I'm pulling on it here, it'll also be trying to pull through the bolts on the other side. That's the theory anyway. So that's why I took the extra time to just add some goofy gussets to make this entire plate a little bit more rigid. Now this is for expansion. It means that I want to be able to mount more stuff to this door in the future as I come up with ideas for that. And I don't want to have to strip all the paint back off of this and weld more brackets and tabs. So my attempt at not having to do that, I put a blank piece of square tube in here, and if I wanted to build like some sort of a small box that would fit behind the tire that would hold like first aid equipment or something like that, I could theoretically just get the next size down square tube, and I could build a bracket for that box, slide it down in here, and not have to pull this plate off or modify it in any way. So that's why I have this blank chunk of tube. This is for future ideas. Future Nate will think present Nate, because I'm hopefully going to save myself a bunch of work by adding that. Now this latch totally works, and it's solid. I mean, it does not want to come off of there, and I'm pulling on it really hard, and with only 2 bolts holding this thing on there, it's pretty dang rigid. However, it does come off a little bit easier than I'd like. Oh yeah, I should show you guys this. So it rests on the bottom there, and it rests on the back. That definitely helps make it be a more silent design. But because this is going out at an angle instead of being completely flush with this surface here, it's making it to where it's easy for me to open, and I don't want it to be easy to open. So like right now, I just couldn't imagine. I feel like I could pull on this as hard as I want and it wouldn't pop open, but I want to make sure that it wants to stay latched as good as I can build it. So what I want to do is I want to try and straighten this out and make it to where instead of it being at an angle like this, it's going to be more straight like this. So I'm going to pull off this little bracket that comes with the latch, and I'm going to build my own that's going to hopefully hold it flush to this surface here. The different ideas that I've come up with, I mean, I could have used something in the press brake, but I've got all this scrap material that I was looking through, and I see a perfect shape. There we go, it focused. I see a perfect shape right here. If I cut this and I cut that, and then I weld this chunk of 3/16 by like, I don't know, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, it should give me the right shape that I need in order to encapsulate the end of that latch. So I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna cut a section out of this. We're gonna weld it onto the back side of that bracket we just built, and I'm gonna remove this guy, and hopefully that'll make it to where this will not come unlatched quite as easy. That is perfect. I have so much more confidence in this now. And all I did is just weld that little strip on here. I feel more confident that it's welded too instead of bolted. And because of the orientation of this versus how I'm mounting it, I could only take advantage of 1 bolt hole. So I'm much more comfortable with this setup for a number of different reasons. But because I was able to straighten out this angle, I mean, it made it, that is way better. It's much more satisfying. And I have no question that that is going to hold up just fine. However, for security reasons, and on 2 fronts, I'm going to drill one of these holes out, and I've got a lock that should fit this perfect, just a padlock. So then if I do, I mean, I live in Tacoma, for crying out loud, so if I do go somewhere where I don't want someone to be able to pull this off and steal the tire, can at least give them a little bit of a fight by putting a padlock on there, and that padlock will double as a way to keep this from opening up, because the way the padlock will latch on there, it'll make it to where this can't open because of the padlock. So I think that that's going to be my security measure going forward, and it should check a few different boxes. So now I actually start building the mount for the tire, and this is probably going to be the hardest part of this entire thing. always keep a good amount of 1 3/4 180 wall tubing on hand for this exact reason. I don't always know exactly how I'm going to move forward on a project, but as I've been building, I've been coming up with some ideas. I want to make this next piece out of one continuous chunk of tube, meaning that I'm going to have to make a 180-degree bend. Not a lot of machines can do this. I'm very fortunate to have a bender that can do this, and not only is it going to be functional, but I know that this is going to look awesome. One of the hidden talents of a belt grinder is that you can put the right size roller on it and you can notch tube, and you can notch tube super clean. In this case, we're going to notch some rectangular tube, and it's going to make it to where you have a perfect fitment and have very little gap to fill with the welder. Seen my channel before, then you know that I love using lasers in the shop. This is a perfect example of when you can dial in the center line of multiple pieces, and all you have to do is set up your laser first. Struggling here, folks. This looks awesome in real life, I promise you. It looks really cool, but I can't get the camera at an angle where you can really like grasp what it looks like. So this is what you got. Sorry. I'll try to shoot some B-roll so you can kind of get a vibe of what it looks like in real life. But our proportions and everything really turned out good. The 37 doesn't stick out too crazy in a couple different ways. It doesn't stick out in the way that it's not screaming at you like, look at me, I'm a big ass 37, but it's also not sticking out very far from the body. So I think that everything we've mounted so far is very complimentary. We're far from done. There's a lot more work that we have to do here. There's a bunch of gusseting and all kinds of stuff that I want to add to this, some little flares that'll make it look good. But we at least have a tire mounted on the carrier. Now I do want to talk about why I mounted the tire so high. The main reason is the departure angle on the Discovery 2, and then the secondary reason is that this carrier is not made for rock crawling and whatnot, and so I'll explain that. With the Land Rover Discovery 2, there's a ton of body behind that rear axle, and that is a giant consideration for me because that departure angle plays a huge part in how much you can get away with your tire. If the rear axle made it to where the rear of my tires connected to the axle were close to the bumper, that departure angle would be awesome, and I could probably get away with moving this lower. But because we already have a bad departure angle, obstacles are gonna be in this area a lot. When I come down a big rock or something like that, and those rocks try to rip tire carriers off. I did not build this tire carrier to be a rock crawling style tire carrier. This is an overlanding style tire carrier. So this doesn't have the durability that I would put into a rock crawling style. Rock crawling style carriers to me need 4 mounting points. That's how I've always done them. And because obstacles will grab those. And I've had multiple instances where I'm held up big time and I'm having to like neutral drop to get over an obstacle, and rocks are just trying to keep that tire with them. So we can't afford that in a carrier that has 1 hinge point. It's just not something that we can deal with. So I moved the tire up really high like this to keep it away from those obstacles. The downside, the huge downside, is that we are moving our center of gravity up. So the center of gravity, when I'm sitting in the Discovery, the center of this tire rather, is probably about here on me. So we have a 37-inch tall tire that is almost about where like my weight is in the vehicle. And I'm gonna feel that. I'm gonna feel this back here. There's no doubt about it. But you just gotta weigh your pros and cons. How are you building it? You gotta understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. I understand the cons that come with this, and because of that, I'm gonna be taking much less risks when it comes to being off camber and things like that. I'm just gonna always be mindful of that. Between the rooftop tent and this tire, I've got a lot of weight up there. So I can't afford to do anything crazy in that regard. But I think for an overlanding setup, this makes a lot of sense. Now, we do have a lot of work to do on this bumper and on the carrier. Right now, you can see that it's kind of leaning, and that's because we only have 3 mounting locations on the bumper itself. We've got 6 bolts. We've got a mounting location here, mounting location there, 2 bolts, 4 bolts, 6 bolts with this in the center. But what we really need is we need 2 more mounting locations that are in front of the bumper. So going that way. So in the next video, I know I said I wasn't gonna make this 3 parts, but there's gonna have to be a part 3. And the next video, we're gonna make that corner protection, and that corner protection is gonna have some really solid anchor points into the chassis, and that's gonna make it to where this bumper can't swing out and flex this direction anymore. The good news is, when I'm moving this thing around, I can see the bumper move, but I do not see this hinge move at all. So we made a really solid mounting location for that hinge. We just need to tighten up the relationship of the bumper to the chassis. Speaking of tightening up, these bolts aren't super tight yet either, so there's gonna be a lot of opportunity for us to make this not sway around near as much. So in the next video, we are going to finish the carrier because there's a lot of work that needs to be done here on the carrier to get it the way I want it, with gusseting, and we're gonna do some like beautification type stuff, and we're going to finish the bumper, and we actually need to build an overland table still. So I'm gonna be building an overland table for the back side of this, and that's gonna kind of be the crown jewel of this whole thing. I can't wait to get started on that project, but for now, this video is unfortunately over. Now I want to take a couple minutes. We're going to blast through a few of the comments from the last video. And the last video was Overland Tire Carrier build. Step 1, building a strong off-road bumper. First question comes from Silent GDE. How come you don't cover the vehicle with something to protect it when you're welding close to it? Well, with vehicles that the paint is in good shape, I am very cautious about that kind of thing. But in this case, the paint is so awful. It's got overspray all over it from the last owner. It needs a new paint job, so I'm not concerned at all about, I won't weld right up next to the paint where I'm like melting and everything, but if a little bit of spatter hits it, it will not make a difference in the look of this paint job at all. So I only cover it whenever I need to, and for most of the area of this Discovery, I definitely don't need to. Next comment is from Logan Lapsley. No dimple dyes. Who took my Nate? So I use dimple dyes a lot. I have been in a big dimple dye phase for a few years where I just want to put them on everything. We definitely will put some dimple dyes in this project. Won't be a ton, but there certainly will be some dimple dyes in it by the end. Last question is from Nick Cowley. How do you plan on getting the bolts when the 45 degree plates are on? So there's a big gap between the end of the edge of the 45 degree plate and where the bolts mount into the backside of the other plate. And so there's a gap, just enough gap to fit a tool in there, plenty of room to work. So I know that I didn't show the underside, but I think we'll probably get to see that in the next episode. When I pull everything off and I'm finished welding all that, you're going to be able to clearly see that there is a good sized gap in there for me to work. Thank you so much for watching. Big thank you to our sponsor, Empire Abrasives. Click the link in the description. It'll take you right there. And if it's your first time shopping with them and you use our coupon code DIRTLifestyle, you'll save an additional 10%. Also, thank you so much to EMS Off-Road. This spindle setup that they have so far has been very impressive. I'm very happy with it. And then thank you to Barnes for the rest of the goodies that you have been throwing my direction for projects like this. If you guys want to help support the channel, you can go to thedirtlifestyle.com. We have t-shirts, hats. My wife is making new stuff all the time. We have stickers, neck gaiters, all that. So if you're into that kind of thing, you want to help support the channel, go there. And we also have a link to our Patreon account there as well. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.